Alrighty. Everybody see it now?
Yep.
Flawless. All right, so
You need you to zoom in though.
that's right. We need 150x zoom. I got a bunch of blind folks here. No, I'm sure it's probably small on your end. So they wanted 22 million for this particular deal. So 163 units in Dothan, Princeton Place. But it didn't make sense. Even at 16 million, I guess it started making sense. Yeah, it started making a little bit of sense at 16 million, but still I wasn't very enticed even at that number. So we ended up passing on this deal, but of course there's another broker sent opportunity. This one was actually, they said that the seller would entertain owner financing. So they said that they needed at least 30% down and they would owner finance 70%. So with 70% owner finance, that was at the 30, and then they would do 4.5% interest. And then let's see what they say for these terms. They're willing to do 3 years IO, 30-year amortization. But they wanted it to go full term. This dang screen sharing thing. How do you like remove this? I can't see. I can't click my buttons. No, that doesn't work. Can you guys see any of this?
Yep.
You see all like mute, stop video, security, participants, chat. You see this?
No,
No. That I don't.
I'm trying to get rid of it. It just won't disappear. So I'll have to like minimize to move this out of the way. What was I saying?
30-year amortization, but they wanted to go full term and then you stopped with that.
Yeah, they wanted to go full term at year 5. So we were either going to sell it or do some refi by then. Of course, love to try to do the refi by year 3, but I think the numbers didn't make sense, if I remember correctly. Yeah, even at the cheaper purchase price, it's still only a 60%, 66% return of capital in year 3. So basically this would have been a 5-year sale. And even then we're not necessarily doubling capital, and there's a slight deficiency in the first year. But just to run through it, 163 units. This was set up on the owner financing plan. It was a 35-1-1, 36-2-1s, 68-2-2s, and 24-3-2s. This was the current rent they were getting. This is where they said we could take rent, which made it seem like it was going to be a deal, but for the purchase price that they wanted, it didn't make sense where current insurance numbers and other things were at. So estimated about $1 million in CapEx. That was what the broker told me we needed for certain things to match this and compare this property to the next comparable asset that they were actually getting these rents from. So put that in there. Then we're at the 792 is what the actual T12 said, even though they were saying they were at this currently. So this is where I put in here with 792. And then according to this, it says we can get 1053, but the 1010 must have been where his pro forma was that he sent me in his in the email that he sent me. So I just put that in there. This is where they were currently saying they were at 3% vacancy, 2% concessions, lost lease, and some bad debt. Real estate taxes kept the same. Insurance we changed. It's not directly next to the coast because it's in Dothan, so it's probably like 2 to 3 hours north of the coast. So it's not directly affected by what we've been seeing by coastal pricing, but it's still going to be an uptick. So we went up to 122 from where this purchase was. Contract services kept the same, trash, same. Everything else pretty much the same, except the management fee. They currently were not paying any management fee at all, or payroll. There was no payroll and no management fee on what they had sent me. I'm like, that just didn't even make sense. How do you achieve that? And he basically said that they just took it off the T12. I'm like, that really makes no sense. Why would you take it off the T12? But anyway, so put it back on there on what I know we would be paying for, which is we estimated probably about a 3.5% management fee for an asset of this size, 163 units, and then payroll about 100,000. So that's maybe two full-time employees at the very least, maybe a part-time employee. Might have to spend a little more if we have a part-time there. Advertising and cable, I was pretty blown away that they were paying for cable. This is like cable / internet. So basically implemented just a chargeback on what they were paying for that. Not for the advertising, obviously, but for the cable. And then the deposit to replacement reserves, we did $350 a unit this time, instead of $385 a door. 4.5% for the interest rate based on what they said owner financing terms were, which made the debt coverage ratio look good. Cap rate buying at almost a 5.8, say 6 cap. And this was probably about a C class asset, probably in C condition too, but probably in a C location. So it's at this price. If I was able to get it at 16 million, not 22 million, then we're trending back in the direction of what I was initially saying with cap rates going back up with B and C class assets. But they didn't want to take $6 million haircut on the price that they wanted, naturally, because it is just not quite hurting them enough yet to want to deduct the price that low. So they didn't budge. And again, we didn't end up doing the deal. But moving forward on underwriting the opportunity, we came over here. 1% earnest money is what we're estimating. We were going to charge a 1% acquisition fee, buying at a 5.8 cap. So we went up 10 basis points per year we held. So at the 5th year when we sold, we're at the 6.3. Cash on cash return was averaging 8.8%. And we were doing a 70-30 split with only a 7 pref as opposed to 8, merely because this deal wasn't quite like there was a deficiency in the first year. And when I was initially underwriting it with these numbers, that was at the $22 million purchase. So I'm like, I'm trying to eliminate the deficiency as much as possible. So we went from our 8% pref to 7. And then I, of course, changed the purchase price to 16 million, and there was still a slight deficiency in the first year, but we pay it up immediately in the second. So wasn't too terribly shabby. And then the 2% asset management fee, no capital transaction fee. Yeah, the returns are meh. They're all right. This may be, I don't think it will be, but this may just be the new norm as we're in this weird interim phase between now and the next 6 to 12 months. When I said like cap rates are starting to shift back and we're going to start to see some more lucrative opportunities as opposed to what we were seeing previously. But if you're currently acquiring now, unless you can get really creative, unless you can find that direct to seller off market opportunity, they're willing to be super negotiable with you on any kind of creative financing. This 16% so IRR less than 2x equity multiple in 5 years may become the new norm just in the next couple of months, which again is why I think there's going to not necessarily be as much movement in the next couple of months until we start to see that transition. For our rent escalator, we were estimating we were going to be able to go from 792 to 903 to 1047, which is about where we thought we could take it, 1010, 1053. And that was at a 14%, 16%. And then we averaged back out at the 3% increase year over year after we achieved where rents are today by year 3. With a 6% vacancy, 2% concessions loss lease, 5-4-3 step down on the expenses over the next couple of years. Didn't change anything on the other income from where we had it at our projected column and really all the way across, which included that cable payback or chargeback. Changed the taxes in the second year, 75,000 from 57 at the purchase. Pretty much kept everything else the same across the board at the 3.5%. Repairs and maintenance, 125.1. Is that what we had here? Yeah, that's what we had here. So no changes there either. Same for the payroll. Yeah, same. And then we had our 3 years IO, interest only periods. And there was a slight deficiency in this year, even with the 7 pref after paying the 2% asset management fee. And now what you could do is you could decide to forego your asset management fee. So if you see here, we're collecting over $30,000 in just the first year for an asset management fee. But we have a $64,000 deficiency in the pref. So in order to, you still wouldn't be able to get to 100%. Unless some of these numbers changed and you didn't have as much vacancy and you went higher on rents, then you could potentially not have any deficiency. But if everything stays the same and your conservative underwriting ends up being what happens, you could take the 30,000 and just put it towards this and not pay yourself an asset management fee. Now, it's not ideal to not get paid, but if it makes the investors happy, that's kind of our thought process, especially if we know we're going to be deficient on something. And if it's going to be cumulative. So if this was like, if we don't pay it in the first year, then it doesn't recoup here, then honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I may even be more incentivized to not take the asset management fee and pay it, knowing that it isn't cumulative. But especially if it is cumulative, excuse me, then I'm going to have to pay it back regardless. Like the number is going to increase because you see this pref due 429 and now the pref is 493 because the additional 64,000. So it's just more that we're going to have to owe the following year, which is going to reduce our cash flows. It's going to reduce where our actual cash, like net cash position is from a T12 perspective, which it just could put us in a interesting situation when come time for any kind of early refi or something like that. So we're always of the mindset. I mean, and one, you just want to keep your investors happy. So we're always of the mindset, if we can actually submit the pref, if we can submit and distribute as much as possible, then we're going to do that because all the prefs on all of our deals are always cumulative. So we know we're going to have to pay it regardless at some point. Now, of course, there's some cases where you just can't pay it depending on where you are financially with the asset. But in this scenario is what I'm getting at. We would probably forego our 2% asset management fee and just give it to the investors to close the gap on this number, or at least get closer on the gap.
When you're saying cumulative, what exactly are you meaning with that?
Cumulative means that I owe 7% of the equity actually raised. So the equity actually raised being 6129079. Taking that number and coming over here to pref return due. So out of that 6 million, whatever number, $429,036 is 7%. And that's the pref that they're paid, first before everything. So cumulative is stating that whatever I don't pay of the 429.36 in the first year or the second year or the third year, whatever, it's just going to roll over into the next year, which is exactly what this is saying, because we've got our 429,036 that's in this number, but then we've also got this 64,000 that we didn't make in the first year, the deficiency that adds on to the 429 and makes it 493,342 that we now owe this year, which luckily we're able to pay because our cash flow position is stronger. We've gone up on rents. Potentially, maybe we've gone down on vacancy or whatever that might look like. Maybe we've streamlined some expenses, or we've been able to reduce our tax burden, not up to 75,000 because we were able to protest the taxes. We do that on every deal we've ever done, and it's been great for us. Or whatever the case is, maybe something shifts and we have a little bit more cash flow, but either way, we make up the pref that was due. And so now we're made whole. We also got our asset management fee, and there's even a little excess cash to distribute, because then the following year it's 429 again, and it's going to continue to be 429 every year until we either pay back principal, until we decide to make some equity a payback of principal, or when we execute on a refi or a sale and actually give them back their capital, because there are some deals, some sponsors that like to say that distributions, whether they be monthly, quarterly, whatever, they like to say that distributions are actually a return of member capital and not a return on member capital, which basically means if I was to say we have a 10 pref, to keep numbers simple. There's $1 million of total equity in the deal and we're distributing a 10 pref. So let's say we just have one investor in at $1 million and he gets his $100,000 for that first year. Instead of that being a return on member capital, which would be like you're just getting an extra 100 grand on top of the money that we're already going to give you back eventually, but we haven't given it back to you yet. So this is all like net profit. Like this is all just bonus because it's a return on the money. So it's a legitimate cash on cash return. Whereas some people like to do a return of member capital, which would be saying that, hey, this $100,000 we just gave you is going to drop your bottom line. So now instead of $1 million in the deal, you now only have 900,000 in the deal. So the next year, when we pay you your 10 pref, you're only going to get 90,000 instead of 100,000 because your basis has dropped. We've reduced your basis by paying you back your principal, which I think is bogus. I would hate that if I was an investor, which is why we don't do that. So we always make sure it's a return on the capital, not a return of the capital. But that's just a random tangent. Was that too many tangents, or did I answer the question of the cumulative?
No, I think that was good. So going back to the last point that you were making, the return on capital versus the return of capital. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Why would anybody, I guess, sign up for a return of capital? Like, I don't see where are they actually making money back? Because it sounds like they're just getting, payments back on, that $1 million that the investor put in. It sounds like he's just getting basically payments back until he gets his money back, but I don't see where he's actually making any money.
The actual profit is typically on the upside. So typically those kinds of deals are maybe they give the investors a promote, or maybe there's some form of an investor waterfall, or maybe there's just the upside, just like the equity position that they held when they bought in. So they're going to continue to pay down their $1 million year over year. Let's say 2-3 years. 3 years later, they've got at least 300,000 back. Now they have $700,000 basis. And so out of the $700,000 basis, the equity that they have, let's say it's 70% of the total equity, but it's 70% now of 700,000 as opposed to $1 million. Now they're going to get the upside from that number. So whatever the sale price is, they would get whatever. And typically something like that is usually more of a debt investment as opposed to an equity investment in the first place. I have seen people do it with equity investments, which again, just like you're saying, makes absolutely zero sense to me. But most of the time when I see a structure like that, the investors coming in what the industry calls a preferred equity position, or what I call a debt position, just to keep it really simple. Basically, they're coming in and they don't actually hold any equity. They call it preferred equity, but it's not technically an equity position because you're just getting your return of capital back. And then no, you wouldn't get any upside. So you just basically get some kind of, you get your pref and then you get your capital back, but you wouldn't get the pref until they sold, until they like bought you out, which again, it's supposed to be like a safer share. So like you get paid first because you're preferred equity, you're in the debt position. So you're like right next to the bank. So bank obviously is the first person going to get their cash. Then you would be the second person. And then any other investor that wants upside and all that other stuff, that investor would have higher risk. So they would get paid last. And you getting paid in second position or whatever as the preferred equity, the debt investor, let's say they decided to do the pay downs similar to how we're talking about. They would do, really you can structure it anyway, but the way I've seen it is that you could do the pay downs year over year with say it's 10 pref. And after 2 years, they're going to do a refi and buy you out. Well, they'll give you, if you invest $100,000, you're gonna get your 20 grand in the pref, but they're still gonna quantify your capital that they're returning to you, the pref that you technically got year 1 and year 2, they're gonna quantify it as return on or return of member capital. But regardless, they still end up giving you upon the refi your 20%. So you invest $100,000, 2 years later, you have 120, and that's it. No upside, no equity. You get no depreciation benefits. Sometimes I've seen them give depreciation benefits, and that's when they call it the preferred equity position. You just structure it a little differently with the SEC, but most of the time, the preferred equity investor gets no equity, no actual tax benefits, just a solid pref. It's a little confusing, and it makes no sense to me why anyone would want to invest in a deal where their capital is being diminished. Because it's also confusing. Like everything I just explained, I see all you guys sitting there, and it's kind of like going over your head a little bit, and you're like, this is just confusing, because it is. And to me, the confused mind says no, right? Like if I'm talking to an investor and I'm trying to explain it the same way I just tried to explain it, they're going to be just like you guys, like, I'm not interested. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I would rather do something else. So we try to keep it simple. That's why we do all cumulative. It's like, hey, regardless of whether we pay in the first year, the second year, the third year, like you're going to get your pref. We're not going to reduce your basis. So you're going to get that as well. And then same thing I've explained before with the perpetuity model, like just explaining that it seems to make a lot more sense to investors, which makes my job a lot easier when I'm pitching it to people. But yeah. Was there any other questions on this page before we move on? No? Sweet. Acquisition costs, same old, about $10,000 for the I almost said LEC. LLC, PPM docs, SEC docs, putting all that stuff together. About $150 for the property inspection for third-party individual to come out and look. No lead paint inspection required due to the age of the asset. Probably about $6,500 in the appraisal. A lot of these are kind of like placement holders, title policy, 0.2%, transfer taxes, 0.1%. Real estate taxes, 6 months based on the number we had over here, the 57,000. And then same thing with the insurance, 24,450 based on our new number of 122, where our new premium would be at. And then the cost seg being about $8,500, bringing our total closing cost to 169. And then with the 5-year sale at the 6.3 cap, since we're buying at 5.8, 10 basis points higher, it put us at about 22 million, which is interesting because he wanted 22 million today. But with our calculations, we're estimating that at a 6.3 cap, because we think the market's going to shift further in that cap rate direction anyway, especially with these class assets, the sales price in 5 years is what he wants today. So he's basically saying, hey, I want you to pay 5 year from now price today to me, because I deserve it. You know what I'm saying? Like the numbers speak for themselves, and they don't make any freaking sense, because this purchase price is directly connected to the net operating income and the cap rate. And he's somehow come up with the fact that he believes $22 million to be a great price. It makes total sense for him. Of course it does, right? It's just a bunch of millions of dollars he's going to make on a deal for doing absolutely nothing. Whereas I'm even at 16 million, I'm buying at a 5.8 cap, and the deal's still not that great. It's still not really screaming at me. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting data point just to see. Like I've underwritten a couple of deals over the last week where the purchase price that sellers wanted today, I wasn't even able to achieve in like 5 to 10 years with the same cap rate that they were wanting me to buy at, or a better cap rate. I wasn't able to achieve that sale price because the NOI was so far off from where where they were estimating it like should be, right? Where they were telling me that the overall returns could be. And I'm like, clearly this doesn't make any sense. And so I would contact the broker and I'd be like, hey, look, man, this is what I'm finding out. The sales price I can't even achieve in 5-10 years if we look at this NOI and this cap rate that you told me. And he was like, oh, really? Well, what are your assumptions? And I'm like, what do you mean? What are my assumptions? Literally just look at NOI and cap rate. And that there's no other assumption, right? It's just two numbers that you take and you divide by the cap rate. And bam, you come out with what your price is. And he's like, oh, well, I guess you're right. And he was just they were like blown away at the fact that what I had just told him, as if they hadn't put 2 and 2 together. It was crazy. Anyway. So then basically that's it at that point. Going through all that, then we can look at returns, but we already know what returns are. $100,000 investment. They're going to walk away with about $95,070 plus their initial $100,000 investment. IRR we could look at, but that's not important. And guys, remember, this was even with seller financing. This was the seller financing model that they said, with 30% down and 4.5%. So if I maybe said, well, could you do 80% leverage? What does that change it to? Doesn't quite meet the debt service coverage ratio, but it doesn't matter because it's not a bank. It's individual. And that makes the returns a little better. I mean, we're another, 26% higher on total ROI, another 3-4% on IRR, almost at 10% on cash. And our deficiency is much less. So now I really could take the 30K and you put it towards this, bridge the gap, and then I wouldn't have any deficiency at all at a 7 pref at this purchase price. So maybe we could change the leverage, but this particular seller, he didn't want to change the leverage. He needed at least the 30%.
A quick question, Josh.
What's that?
So let's say your offer gets accepted, right? So you would have to like finance it first before you can bring any investors in, or like what's that timeline where you can start like raising money for that deal?
The timeline for raising capital for the deal, you want to have it under contract first. You want to have legal, equitable interest in it. And then once you do that, specifically if we're going to do a syndication, which definitely sounds like you are, then you would want to make sure that you have your syndication docs. So you'd want to get your SEC attorney working on it immediately after you close the deal. And then once they're working on that, you're telling them how much you're going to need to raise and what you want the structure of the deal to look like. And they're going to wordsmith all that in your PPM and your operating agreement, subscription docs. And then at that point, once you have those docs back, then you're technically quote unquote legal. And that's when you can officially start raising capital. And what I mean by that is actually like accepting cash to be in the bank. But basically what we do is once we get the deal officially under contract and we get our attorney working on it, especially if we're doing a 506B. If we're doing a 506C where I can commercialize it and advertise, I would most definitely want to be all the T's crossed, all the I's dotted, everything official before I start publicizing it and the SEC audits me and does whatever. And we get a whole heap of trouble. But knowing that we do 506B and I'm just going to close group of individuals that have already invested with us before or shown massive interest, as soon as we get the deal under contract, I would go to my A list of investors that I know are almost like 95, 99% guaranteed to invest with us and be like, hey, you got this deal coming around the bend. Here's the preliminary numbers. Here's what we're looking at. This is what we underwrote at initially. We haven't officially done all of our due diligence, so there could still be a hiccup somewhere, but here's kind of what we're penciling or what we feel like we can pencil conservatively. Are you in or you out? What do you think? And most of them are just like, yeah, I'm in. I don't even need to know any more information. Some of them want to know more information and others don't want to commit until we finalize the due diligence. So to answer your question more specifically, if it's a 506B deal, I start raising as soon as the deal's under contract, but only if it's people that are already in my really close network. If it's a 506C deal, I wouldn't start raising until you have all the docs completed. And you can't actually accept any cash, regardless of which one you do, until the docs are completed. And of course, you have a bank account open. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Sweet. All right.
So of the deals that you guys have done, how many have been 506B and how many are 506C?
We've never done a 506C deal, so everything we've ever done is 506B. I'm curious, honestly, to do a 506C deal because never having been able to just publicly advertise a deal to my network, I'm really curious what my reach would be and how much capital I could actually raise. Just, going out there and posting it on social media, talking about it on my podcast. I'd be really curious, but we haven't done that. So all of our stuff is in-house, so to say, where you have some form of a pre-existing relationship with every one of our investors.
It's interesting because majority of the investors that I have talked to, they have never done 506B. They go after 50C only and accredited investors. So you're a different animal, man.
So, Chris, I'm curious, how's that actually going for you? Now I'm asking you questions because I'm curious
Well,
how your capital raise is going.
I'm not a C, I'm B.
Oh, all the C investors are reaching out to you, but they can't invest.
No,
Is
no,
that
no,
what
no,
you're
no,
saying?
no, no. No, when I'm talking to them, they only advertise and like going after 506 Cs.
Okay.
They don't like do Bs for some reason. I don't know. Don't ask me why.
Huh.
Yeah, and you're the first one that I'm hearing that you actually haven't done the C, but you're doing Bs only.
Yeah, we love it.
Yeah.
It's working for us. We're about 50-50, maybe 40-60.
Yeah.
About 40 to 50% of our investors are sophisticated and 50 to 60 are accredited. So we would hate to eliminate 40 to 50% of our investor base just
Of course.
because we're no longer accepting sophisticated investors, because more often than not, they may be sophisticated, but they got bukus of cash and they invest the same amount on like every deal. Like, hey, we got another deal. They're like, all right, here's 100K. Like, how are you not accredited yet? Where are you getting all this money? But they're just not. Their situation, they don't meet the accreditation status.
Now, is that something that you control, or is that something that your attorney tells you which way to go?
For 506B or C, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
We make the decision.
Okay.
I mean, he can guide us on what he thinks we should do, but at the end of the day, it's us being like, hey, look, here's what we want to do. Here's what we would like to do. How do we work? Like, how do we need to structure it to work within the bounds of that? And then that's when he would be like, well, if you're wanting to publicly advertise, if you're wanting to do this, if you're needing to raise like, $30 million, then maybe it'll make more sense to be a little bit more public about it. So in that case, we need to do C, and here's the different things we need to do 506C, whatever, but
Yeah.
it's pretty much our decision.
And you're usually going after like the government loans, or you do business like with the Freddie Mae?
You know what? No, we've not done agency debt yet, because agency debt requires you to have 2 years experience, 3 years experience. And so we didn't have that in the beginning. So we were using community banks, local banks. They were giving us the most favorable terms. And when we were first getting started, that was when COVID was at its peak season. So there was like massive COVID reserves. It's like 9 to 12 months of principal interest, like PITI, that they wanted you to have set aside. And we just didn't make sense, right? It was completely destroying deals. So some deals, that's like $400,000 they wanted you to just have in reserves at closing, which meant you had to raise an additional 400 grand in equity just to put in an account to give to them to hold, to not utilize at all. And then 12 months later, they just give it back to you. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, okay. But either way it goes, I'm having to dilute equity because I'm having to hold on to $400,000 of investor equity just to close the deal. So instead of going with that kind of loan, we went to local banks, which didn't require that at all. They didn't have any prepayment penalty. There was no yield maintenance. It was still favorable interest rates, favorable terms. The only caveat was that it was recourse debt and not non-recourse, which we were totally fine with because we were just getting started anyway.
Right.
So we utilized that in the beginning. We've done a couple of bridge loans since then. And now we're getting ready to segue on one of our deals into agency. So that'll be our first like deal that has agency, where we can check the box stating we've done agency, start to get that experience or whatever. But honestly, I think for the refis, agency may make a lot of sense here in the coming months and in the coming years. But for new deals, I'm starting to notice that one, of course, as we've talked about, creative financing, loan assumptions, owner financing, things like that make a lot of sense. But two, community banks are still honestly what we're seeing make the most sense right now, just because they are taking a little bit longer than the Fed to raise their interest rates. So sometimes you can still get a lower rate than where the new Fed rate is at going with a local bank. Sometimes you can still get more favorable terms. There's not nearly as many requirements with the local bank because they're typically more incentivized. Since it's local, it's in that bank's own backyard. They want to invest where they are. They want to grow where they are. Their investors know, like, and trust all that. So it's very easy for them to underwrite those deals, approve them, and move things very quickly. Sometimes we were even able to close community bank deals much quicker than any kind of agency or any kind of bridge debt, because they were local. We had a close relationship. Quickly, literally just like drive up to the bank 5 minutes up the road, chat with the guy that you're connected with, sign the docs, and be done. Like, it's not like this massive back and forth that takes 3 months and all this delays and this, that, and the other. It's like, everyone in the office, and it made things run a little more smoothly when we were first doing it. And so we're now starting to see that it's similar. It's going to be similar for the next couple of 6 to 12 to 18 months, probably, until things kind of even out with where we're at currently with where interest rates are and the lending market.
Now, how typical is it, or maybe you will say it's unusual, that banks will ask GPs to come down with, like, 5% down payment or something in the nature? Is that common?
For agencies, super common. They usually want to see about 10%. Bridge debt, it's also common depending on the lender.
The bridge, I know, but I mean just conventional.
But conventional, like local banks, the banks we've dealt with, they actually don't require you to have anything. Now, granted, we put some of our own equity in anyway on the GP side, just because, one, we wanted to, but two, we wanted to have that show of good faith to our investors as well. But it wasn't a requirement with the local bank. And so that was another benefit, right? And again, like I said, the only caveat that we could find with using the local bank was the fact that it was recourse debt. So it's going on your balance sheet, so to say, and you can only have so much before they start getting weary of debt to income and all this, that, the other. But that's why those deals that we initially did with the agency or with the community banks, those again will be refining into agency, which will be fully non-recourse. So once we hit the refis on the deals that have those now, they'll be non-recourse debt anyway. And it'll be longer term, perpetuity model, non-recourse. So we won't have to worry about that. It's just in the short interim, we had to take that hit to get the deal closed, get it to where it needs to be, and eventually invert. And sometimes, depending on your relationship with the bank and depending on how you structure the debt, they'll give you partial non-recourse. And there's actually a couple of different ways to structure the partial non-recourse as well, which I just recently found out about. We won't get too deep into it because I'm still wrapping my head around it. But basically, we've done deals before where there's like 75% recourse and 25% non-recourse, or 50% recourse and 50% non-recourse.
Interesting.
And they just structure it how they feel like their level of safety net that they need as a bank, as a lender, for that particular asset. And of course, it also depended on our balance sheet, our experience, our rap sheet, that they were looking at that as well to all go into their underwriting and their calculations of what that was going to look like.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm asking because we just got email today with the bank that everything was going smooth, the paperwork and all. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, by the way, we're gonna need 5% from the GP side from the purchase price. And we're like, what? So I mean, that's like, we don't know what we're gonna do right now, because that's like over 200K that we all of a sudden we're gonna have to come up from the GP side for the closing.
So what you could do with that is you can actually, just like you're doing now, continue raising capital. Don't stop the capital raise. and get an LP on to bring in 200K. Get someone that wants to invest 200K, or two people that want to each invest 100K. And what you'll have to do is you can give them an additional 1%, 2% equity, however you want to structure that, for them to sign on and be GPs. Even you can still make sure that they have like no say so, like they won't actually be on the active management team, but they'll be GPs in the form of being KPs, signing on the loan and putting their 200K that they're going to invest anyway. So they're getting their LP shares, and you're giving them an additional % or 2 on the GP side to sign on as a GP. And then now you've satisfied the 200K GP. There you got 2 extra investors on the LP side, and they're happy because all they had to do was sign a couple of pieces of paper to say that, yeah, I'm on the GP, here's 100K, and they got a little extra % of cash flow or
Right. Interesting. Yeah. So they will have to get a piece of equity and cash flow, right?
yeah. So they would actually have legitimate equity on the GP side, however you decide to determine what that percentage is. Just make it enticing, but not like too enticing. Like, don't give too much away.
Yeah, of course. What is not too much and what is too little in your experience?
We've done 1%, maybe 1.5%. I don't know that we've ever gone up to 2%, because on one deal that we did actually have to do this. We had to have an LP come in and sign as, like, give them a little GP and utilize that to get us where we needed to be on the GP side for the loan that we used for that deal. We needed to bring in like 800,000 or 900,000 on the GP side to satisfy the lender. And so we brought in like 500,000 or 600,000, and we had to get someone else on the LP side to come in to satisfy the rest.
Are they looking into where this 200,000 or whatever would come from? Meaning,
yes,
like
they may need to actually, quote unquote, underwrite that individual, which means they.
No, I'm talking like, what if I would have borrow it from someone and flip it to my account and come in as a me GP, but have like a promissory note on that money or something like that.
I mean,
meaning,
could do that.
I guess my question is, are they going to look if I previously had that money in my account, or where did it came from? Because obviously it cannot be loan or banks don't like for like borrowers take the loan for the down payments, right? You know how they drill you when you go for the loan for like single family. At least they looking into it. They like, oh, this money has to be in your account for like 30 or 60 days prior of you putting the application and all that bullshit.
I think it's going to depend on the lender. I think it's going to depend on the bank, but we've never experienced that. They haven't ever gone as far as to look into how long the money's been there, where it came from.
Yeah,
because these loans are more specifically asset based than they are individually based. And so they're focusing much more on the asset than like, hey, where'd your 200K come from? Did you rob a bank or do an illegal drug deal? Like, they're just like, hey, as long as you got the cash, works for me.
So what Chris was talking about is essentially the bank is asking for the GP to come with a down payment, for lack of better words. Is that essentially
that's correct? Yes. So they ask for like general down payment for whatever, but then the GP has to come with 5% of the down payment from the purchase price, because initially we thought that we're gonna have to come up as a GP for 5% from the down payment amount, which would have been like, okay, that's fine, right? But when they send us email today that no, that 5% it needs to be calculated from the purchase price, we were like, holy shit, that's changed perspective, like that's a lot more than we thought.
So if they're asking for, we'll say 20% down, then they're also saying you need an additional 5%.
No, not additional. 5% has to come up from the GP. That will be deducted from the total, down payment. but that 5%, it cannot be the 5% of the asking down payment, but 5% of the price of the property. You know what I mean?
So if the purchase price is $5 million, they want 5% of 5 million
Right.
from the total, like total capital stack, total purchase price. They want you to bring in 5%. And which
Correct.
honestly, most of the time what I see is 10%. So 5% is pretty good if they're asking for that. But like I said, with the community banks that we did, they didn't even require that at all. So
Well, see, the thing is that this one is the one Ember with the assumable loan. So I mean,
oh yeah.
yeah, and that one is the Freddie Mac too. So
Yeah. Well,
And the
yeah,
purpose
like I
of-
said, what's
And
that?
the purpose of that is just to make sure that the GP has skin in the game. Is that
Yeah.
the purpose of that?
yeah, probably, because I mean this is our first syndication, so you know that there's many things that may come to that decision. We have between me and my partners, we have a bunch of deals, but majority, well, not all of them, they are JV partnership deals. None of them are syndication. So you know, the fact that this is a syndication may be reason number one. The fact that this one is the largest of all that we ever done, maybe the reason number two. So I mean, I don't know, maybe multiple reasons.
Okay,
For
interesting.
the most part, from what I am told, they just want to know that you're financially capable to manage the deal. And they feel like if you have 5 to 10% of the purchase price to put in your own,
Right.
then not only are you going to be financially capable to manage the deal and purchase the deal, but your skin in the game is now going to more heavily incentivize you to want to manage it
Right.
properly.
It makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. So guys, did you want to try to underwrite another deal, or did anyone have any deep lingering questions, thoughts, comments, anything anyone's struggling with?
I just wanted to get some clarification. So let's say you get a deal under contract, right?
Mhm.
Are you going to the bank or like whatever financing you're using, you're getting the deal like finance like completely, right? So like, for example, in this instance, if it's 16 million, you're getting financing for the whole 16 million, right? And then you're going out and getting capital, like raising capital for whatever additional, like, but you are getting the financing piece done. Is that correct?
For the 16 million, you're getting a loan on like for the purchase price of 16 million, but they're not going to give you 100% loan to value. They're not going to give you 16 million to close it.
Right.
It may be closer to 65, 70% loan to value, whatever that equates to. So that gap there, which I think was like 4.5 million, I think on this deal, that would be capital just for the down payment to 4.5 million. That's how much capital you'd need to raise. But I think the total was like 6.1 when you included CapEx, closing costs, fees, reserves, all that stuff. It came to 6.1 million. So the 6.1 million you would raise from investors. And then a big chunk of that, the majority of that would be for the down payment to close the deal. And then the rest of it, the fees, the reserves, that other stuff.
Okay, that makes sense. I just wanted to kind of get an idea of when you would start like raising money, right? Because obviously when you're raising money for a deal, you have to have it under contract before you can go out and raise money for it. So that's kind of,
Right.
But okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. See if I can pull up another deal. We could look at this Raleigh deal, I guess.
Let's do it.
I think it's Raleigh. Yeah, Raleigh, North Carolina. So I can save what I've done. And bam, 57 units, Trails Corner Apartments. And the guys, this deal is actually live because the broker sent it to me, I think on Saturday. So Ahmed, if you're really interested in this deal, maybe we'll do a full underwriting right now, or maybe we'll just kind of talk about it. Either way, I encourage you to underwrite this deal if you are interested. And another cool thing about this particular packet that he sent me as I was going through it is it includes like all their different branches in this area and like all the names of the people in it, our team. Charlotte office, Charleston office, Raleigh office, Greensboro office, Greenville, Wilmington, McDaniel, Markson, Millichap staff, like all these names. And then when we scroll all the way to the bottom, the next page, it's got the main people that are exclusively listing this particular deal, plus all these other names. So I was like, this is perfect. If I'm you guys and I got a list like this in a market that I'm targeting, this is awesome. It's literally telling me everybody's name and contact info and where they primarily focus in their little niche. And then I can go and I can look up their data on their website, Marks and Millichap, to see if they have any current deals live that are currently listed, who's got the most listed that are like kind of filling my target buy box, and how do I want to pursue. But I thought that was really cool. So I'll add this to the drive, the shared drive for you to take a look at. Trails Corner Apartments, market overview. They gave you a bunch of market about the Raleigh area. Apple campus at RTP. I don't even know what that is. Y'all know what RTP is? You know what this is, Ahmed?
Research Triangle Park. It's a big area in that Raleigh area where a lot of tech
There it is.
companies are.
What is there? Research Triangle Park. I could have just looked up. Epic Games announces new headquarters in Cary. Google selects Durham for new engineering hub. Some growth. Chapel Hill. Economic generators. Built in 1990, 2022, looks like it was completely renovated. 16 buildings, 57 units. You got the square footage. Oh, this is how many units they renovated. 23 out of 57 were renovated in 2022. Not all of them. I'll give you a little investment summary. So the McDaniel team, Marks Millichap, please present Trails Corner. Property consists of 2 3-bedroom floor plans, 16 buildings, over 8.62 acres. And here we are right here, Trails Corner, with all this other stuff. Offers and investors proven rent growth premiums through continued implementation of light interior upgrades, as well as further upside potential through adding premium upgrades as the submarket continues to mature. So they currently did 23 of the 57 units. They did LVP flooring, stainless steel appliances, faux granite countertops, and a modern paint scheme. And the new premiums on upgraded units are averaging $200 a month, with the submarket comparables showing an additional $50 a month of potential rent growth. I honestly wouldn't underwrite for the additional $50 because $200 a month seems like quite a bump. So I would keep it at the $200 a month. That's probably a pretty aggressive number. Even at that, it could be very conservative. I'm not super familiar with Raleigh, so maybe these numbers are really conservative, but from my perspective, just from what I know about underwriting in general, I would probably lean closer to the $200 a month, at least for starters. You know, if it makes sense at $200 a month, why wouldn't it make sense here? Already considering one of the top multifamily markets in the Southeast, continues to transform its downtown. Central location convenient to downtown. Economic generators, interstate, proven value add opportunity, 54 to 64% upside potential with the remaining 57 units. Desirable mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms. Rapidly transitioning neighborhood. Washer and dryer connections in all units. So that's always good news. I always love to have washer and dryer, at least washer and dryer connections. If there aren't connections, then I want to know, can there be connections? Because I think one of the biggest, I guess you shouldn't say one of the biggest because there's like an infinite number, but one of the nicest value adds that's like a true value add from an actual curb appeal perspective is having washer and dryer connections. Because nowadays it's almost like a requirement for most renters that they want washer and dryer in the unit. So if it doesn't already have one, I would want to know, can we install those connections? What is that going to look like? How much is it going to cost to do that? Where do we have the capacity to actually make those installations if it doesn't already have one? But for this property already having one, my next thought would be, can I actually purchase washers and dryers to install in the units to then charge an even higher premium? And sometimes what you can do is there's really two different ways you can do it. You can actually buy the washer and dryer and put it into the unit and then just charge a higher premium at 25, 50, whatever dollars a month on top of whatever you were initially going to charge, or just blend it into the total. So maybe the blended total is only another $15 or $25 total when you add the washer and dryer in, and you just include in the actual marketing that you do, the washer and dryer will be included. Or you can give the tenant an option and you can say, hey, washer and dryer can be included, but you will have to pay additional rent for that on a monthly basis. And the rent could be, $50 a month, 25 for the washer and 25 for the dryer. So then they could just rent the washer or just rent the dryer if they had one or the other, or whatever they wanted to do. Then you give them the option and you have the potential to possibly get more in rent for renting those than not. We've seen success with that before by actually renting the washer and dryer itself, as opposed to just adding it into the blended cost that you would rent the unit for. On-site management office, it's always good because for 57 units, you're kind of in this weird intermediary position of like, do I need full-time on-site staff? Do I not need full-time on-site staff? I don't know. Is it big enough that it actually requires it? Is it big enough where there's an office? Like, could I actually have someone on-site anyway? Is there anywhere that there is an office, or do I need to take one of the units, decommission it, and then utilize that office or that unit as the actual office? But they actually have an on-site management office. So pretty cool. You can see some pictures. Some market comparables. We see average square feet looks like it's pretty big. They did say spacious floor plans, and it looks like they're pretty much telling the truth because they are the second largest floor plan on a square feet basis. Towns at Bishop Park is a little bit bigger, and their average rent is $1,900. Wow. I would want to look at that property. How are they getting 1,900? Is that like a 2022 build? What was that one called? Towns at Bishop. They're all 2.25 bath. 1,200 square feet. I would just want to know more about this because it was built in 1965. So it's much older, but they're getting $1,900 a month in rent. Like, how? I would want to know that. Maybe it's in like the most pristine location ever, like smack dab downtown. I mean, this picture doesn't scream downtown to me, but who knows? Financial analysis. Obviously, this is what you'll be diving into when you actually do the underwriting of this particular deal, which I don't know. What do you guys want to do? Do you want to actually underwrite it or just do Q&A, or what do you want to do?
I think going through the underwriting would be helpful for me to just, see it again and also have another recording to refer back to.
All righty. Y'all can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't know if this whole time no one could see the screen. It's way too small. Go. Being honest, I don't remember what they were asking as far as purchase price, and I don't think he gave me one either. I think it was just they wanted you to submit offers. So I don't know. We'll just say 5 million, just to throw a number in thin air. 57 units. We could probably get 75% LTV for a really nice asset. Mostly already, it's already leased and it's just a little bit of renovations needed. Repairs and reserves, they were saying that there needed to be LVP flooring, new cabinets, stainless steel appliances, faux granite countertops, and a modern paint scheme. And we were looking at about 1,100 square feet of total to do that. So I'm gonna guess it's probably gonna cost me about 7,500. We'll say 8,000 to be conservative per unit. And I need 57 minus 23. I got 34 units I need to do that to, times 8,000 a unit. I'm looking at 272,000 for the CapEx of the interior renovations. Then on top of that, there'd probably be some exterior renovations that need completed. Say it's another 100 grand plus reserves, 100 and I don't know, 130 grand. We'll just say, well, that's 402, but we'll put it at a flat 400. Which is just 100K shy of the average rule of thumb of that 10% of purchase price for CapEx. But again, this number's pie in the sky, so I don't know what they want.
Can you make the spreadsheet just a little bit bigger?
Oh, here it is. See it now?
Yep.
Gross potential income. Where are we at with the? I wish we knew more about this deal. $1,900 in rent as opposed to the like what 1,300 that I'm getting now. That's a fat gap, and it doesn't look super nice. And it was built in '65. I mean, come on. Oh, that was throwing me off. Actually, it looks like there's a single family home here. So there's 56 units multifamily, but there's one single family home. This must be the office they're talking about. Wow. 1,600 square feet for an office. Pretty nice. So you could even turn that into an Airbnb if you wanted and forget the office. Or do whatever you wanted with that. Historical comparison to pro forma. Let's see, let me see. Can I zoom in on this? Yes, I can. T12, we're going to do T12. So our current market rent from a T12 perspective for gross potential is 722,900. Which they said was 1057. There it is, 1057. They're looking at a 4.9% loss to lease, say 5%. Vacancy loss 7. 9% bad debt. Okay, so 9 plus 5, 14. Coming out with 633 though. How are they coming out with 633? We're coming out with 571. Let's see, 70 and 35. That's 100 and 105, 101. And then 53,000. This is 50,000. It's even less. I don't know. That's weird. Does their math make sense there? It doesn't look like it makes sense to me. Unless this is an addition. Because this is in the red and this is not in the red. So it's just 9% bad debt and no loss to lease. That's what I'm guessing they mean. Still doesn't put me at 633 though. Their math sucks, but we're going to do that. Other income, 38,928. Plug and play payroll is 69,534. Now, if you guys notice when we're looking at this, of course, you got their pro forma over here, blah, blah. We're not even gonna look at that. What we're looking at is the expenses here and why the expenses moved, like why they're different. So this is 2021 expenses. This is the last 12 months of trailing expenses. And then this, the trailing 3 months, you notice the expenses don't change. Because typically when you hear the difference between a T12 and a T3, what you're looking at is literally just the income. So the income for what they've achieved in the last 3 months, they took that, annualized it, estimated, okay, if we're making whatever, $1,254 a month in rent for all the units for the last 3 months, let's just estimate that we're going to make that for the next 12 months. And then that'll be our quote unquote T3 income, which is why the income is so much higher than where it is here, because they've slowly started increasing due to the CapEx that they've been inputting into the deal. But I don't usually like to underwrite for the trailing 12 income because yeah, you may be able to get that, but what if you can't? You've underwritten for that. Something else happened to the market, something shifted, one bad thing moved the needle, and now you're not able to get that, and your initial projections are just shot to crap, and now you're upsetting investors. So we just avoid that altogether, and I always just utilize T12 income and expenses when I'm actually doing the underwriting. Just thought that was something I should point out. So 69,534 for the payroll. 7,748 says gas and electric. So I'm just going to put it in electric. Water and sewer 2,762. That's really cheap. The tenants must be paying for that. Trash 13,244. Repairs and maintenance also extremely cheap. 4423. 0.68%. That's unrealistic. Turnover 4804. I'm just going to add that in repairs and maintenance. So 4423 plus 4804. 9227. 13,000 for landscaping. They're paying more in landscaping than they are in repairs and maintenance. I mean, come on, guys. Ridiculous. Marketing and advertising 10,953. Okay, where are we at?
Well, and that marketing advertisement you took for 2021 instead of
Oh.
above.
Right, I did. You caught that. It's 12,673. Keen eye. Administrative 22,863. Just dumb numbers. I mean, how are you going to tell me that you're spending $22,000 a year on like printers and paper and pens and your software that you're using, but you're only spending 9,000 on repairs for the whole property? All right, done with my rant. 20,179 for the management fee. 47,749 for taxes. 21,730 for insurance. And then they added their own replacement reserves. They had a couple of notes. Taxes for comparison, historical real estate taxes equal FY1 taxes. Projected replacement reserves is 275 a unit. effective rents are defined as gross potential rent less concessions. Whatever. Oh, there it is, effective rent. All right, so we're pretty much done with our financial analysis here. Next, we will basically be moving on to this. Oops. Cancel. Mess me up. Moving on to this, we've got 2-bedroom, 1 bath, 3-bed, 1 bath. And single family home. Calculator, my best friend, 28, 2 ones, for 19 and 9, 3 ones, 14 and 14, 28, and 1 single family home. Then if I average the 2 out, I've got rent low, rent high. Currently, the 2 ones and non-renovated are getting $871. And $1150 on the renovated. So 871 plus 1150. And divide that by 2. Well, it's not entirely accurate. I'm going to say it's probably about 900. I'm going to lean towards the leaner side for where they're currently getting for 2 ones, because they have more 2 ones than they do, or non-renovated 2 ones than they do renovated 2 ones. And I'm going to do the same thing for the 3 ones, even though that one is technically 50-50 at 1414. So I will just 883 add 1250. Divide that by 2. My average is 1066 currently. 1066.50 to be exact. But this analyzer doesn't like decimal points. So 1066, that's my current average rent that I'm getting between the 2 here, but they're telling me that I can go all the way up to 1395, potentially 1450. Potentially 1900, right? If we learn more about that one unit that I would love to know more about. But we'll say 1395 for this one. And for this one, I'll keep it at 1295. For this, they don't tell you because you're not renting it because they think you're going to use it as an office. But they are saying that you could get a rent of about $2,000. Which sounds great to me. They're currently getting nothing, but it could be $2,000. Just rent it. Makes more money. Cool. So basically this is saying we're currently at 1057. Although if you actually looked at this, or if we got even more serious and looked at the rent roll, which of course he didn't send me if I was really wanting to dive deep into this deal. But according to these numbers, we can get to 1356. So we'll take 77,320 and times that by 12. That is going to be our 927,840. 1356. And then we come over here and we're at the 7229 that we were over here. And they were at 7 and 9 for vacancy and concessions. So I don't think we would necessarily be at 9, but we would inherit this property as is. So 7.6. And then ultimately what I would like to get it at is probably 7.2 would be nice. So eliminating 4% there. Okay. Now that pretty much eliminates my need for that. Now I'm going to come over here, finish out this and go over back to the deposit, do 350. We're at 19,950. And we're at about 40%, 39%, but again, that's because their repair and maintenance is like non-existent. So probably what we're gonna want to be estimating is if we do have one full-time staff member, we may be closer to 3.5, possibly even 4%, depending on the size, for management fees. And then one person on payroll, which honestly, you probably need 2 people. You may need a maintenance tech and a leasing agent, but again, the size may put you at just needing a leasing agent, maybe a part-time maintenance tech. Maybe that's what this price is paying. So I'll just put it at an even 70 of what we would be paying, say a part-time maintenance tech or a part-time leasing agent and full-time maintenance tech. Repair and maintenance, I'm bringing that up. I don't, how much, I mean, 10% is the rule of thumb for an asset like this. But if you truly are renovating everything and making everything brand new, then it probably won't be that high anyway. So it may be closer to 5%.
Well, but isn't it better to play conservative?
Oh yeah, always.
Yeah.
So 262. That's telling me we're at like 44,000. So I'll say 40,000. Which puts me at 6% at our current numbers, but it puts me less than that at this number. So I feel like that's probably pretty conservative because early on you'll probably be spending more in repairs and maintenance anyway, and hopefully that would dwindle down, especially if you're going to be putting $400,000 or 272, whatever it was, in capex into the asset, and everything should be mostly brand new. I mean, of these numbers, again, this is at the $5 million purchase price, which obviously they could want way more than that. This is 87 a door. Maybe they wanted 200K a door. I don't know. But either way, I mean, this ain't looking like too bad a deal. Maybe I'm closer to 5 and 5.3 on the interest rate with the recent hike, but I'm still meeting most of my requirements here. Coming in, we would probably charge a 1% acquisition fee. Underwriting this for our own sake, I guess. If we're able to get it for 5 million, we're buying at a 7.4 cap, which is pretty good. Which I guess is why the numbers are what they are. So then estimating five basis points worse, or maybe just 30 basis points worse, because maybe we'll do a refi in year 3. So we'll be at 7.7.
You got some rule of thumb as far as like the acquisition fee that you're charging? Why is it only 1%?
That's just what we do
Okay,
internally as Ferrari Capital, but most people charge anywhere between 1 to 3%. It's kind of the rule of thumb. I've seen as high as like 5-6%.
because that should potentially get you back all of your due diligence money back, right?
No, so you should already get all of that back from the capital that you raise. So all of this closing cost that we
I
would put
see.
in here, the acquisition cost, that's all additional capital that you're raising from
I got you.
investors.
Okay, I
But
got
if you have to pay for it out of pocket just to get, because the money's not in the account yet, or because you're just moving things along, you reimburse yourself that capital at closing. Then
Got
the acquisition fee is on top of that. It's all profit, the acquisition.
got you.
So 70-30 split, no cap transaction fee. We would charge probably a 2% asset, maybe even 3, honestly, since it's in Raleigh and that's not local to us. Then coming over to the P&L, I'll go back here. I'll see I'm at 966, but I'm told I can get to 1356. So what's my timeline looking like to get there? I don't know. What's a 10% increase look like? That's about $100. And I said I can get to what, 1356. So maybe it takes 4 years, but probably not going to take that long. typically going to see the higher jump in the second year than you would the third year, just because you've completed all the CapEx in this year. Most of the time, it takes the first 12 months to do everything you need to do, and then start transitioning things over and getting tenants in at the higher premiums.
So right there, you're saying that in year 2, you're going to go up on all the rents by 15%. And then on year 3, you're going to go up another 12% on all the rents. Is that right?
That's what this is saying, right?
Okay.
Which again, if you're looking at that from a market perspective, that's not technically what we're saying. Because remember, this is where current market rents are today. I just am not charging this yet because I haven't completed my CapEx to force that appreciation to add that value. So that's one reason. But the second reason is conservatism and making sure that I'm projecting it out. It's going to take 2 to 3 years to get me to where we are today in 2 to 3 years. So it's like, hey, look, if the numbers make sense at this, and we talk about conservative, right? Like if I'm saying I'm going to get this today, which one, there would be no way that I would be able to get all of this in 1 year, trying to do all the renovations, all the CapEx, kick all the old tenants out, get all new tenants in at premiums. Like it's just not going to happen. So it's one, it's conservative, and 2, it's more realistic to assume that it's going to take a couple of years for you to actually get where market rents are today. And you're usually going to see a spike in vacancy and concessions in the first year as you're doing all the CapEx, as tenants are moving out now that you're starting to charge higher premiums. And then things typically trickle down after that when you start stabilizing the asset. Our 543 step down on expenses. I haven't done anything to other income. I haven't got very creative there yet, which is fine. Just leave that alone. There's a slight deficiency here just based on what we're looking at now with no IO, no creativity in the financing. Slight deficiency, but we make it up in the second year and then we're golden all the way until sale. And if I come back here at where I'm currently at, I'm getting a 142% ROI on this deal with a 22% IRR and almost a 12% cash on cash. And again, this is our conservative assumption, but it's also at the $5 million purchase. So this could be pie in the sky and the seller could want like 20 million or 22 million, like the other deal we were looking at. They just want way too much money. But we haven't technically finalized our underwriting yet until we do acquisition costs and exit strategies. So probably about 10,000 to do this. Again, 150, it's built in 1990, so no lead paint, maybe 7,000 for the appraisal. Not going to need any environmental study because that's all going to be accomplished in our property inspection. Same with the structural inspection, maybe a 0.5%. It's kind of the rule of thumb. I don't know what the standard is in North Carolina, so I'm just going to put in what the standard is in Alabama for title policy and closing taxes. And then these are all just rule of thumb numbers. 6 months of taxes, 47,749. We're looking at 23,874. And we'll just say 6 months instead of 20% down on insurance. And again, that's if insurance doesn't change. Now, I'm honestly fully expecting that it would. So that's a number we didn't actually touch. It's 21,730 divided by 57 is only 381 per unit. And again, I don't know what they're seeing in North Carolina, but we're seeing like $1,500 a unit. So even if I just go up to 750, I just got a half of that, I'm at 42,750 on this, which changes the numbers a little bit, but still a great deal at where we're at. And it automatically changed it here in our P&L. So then 47, divide that by 2, say that's what we're needing to bring to closing. We're at 21,375. And then a cost sig of this caliber probably be about 7,500. this, if we just did a 5-year sale, we're buying it for 5 million. We're all in total member capital 1.8. We're all in at 5.5 total acquisition cost, and we're selling in 5 years at 7.5. So we're making about 2 million spread there, which of our total 1.8 raised puts us at that 131% total ROI. Let me come over here, our cash on cash, internal rate of return, and then our splits. So us with the 30% split would get 589. And this is if we didn't do the perpetuity model. If we decided to implement the perpetuity model, our goal would be to return 100% in year 2 or 3, which we can, if we can achieve these targets. If we get to this actual NOI of 549 goal here, then we can return 100% plus a little bit of extra buffer there. However, not quite, because we need to be a little conservative with our assumptions on the LTV. So we're still close. I would still pull the trigger on this in terms of a perpetuity model, because we may be able to make this up if we did. If we were able to diminish vacancy or loss to lease, or implement some RUBS model or some new way to create other income, or something like that. Now, however, since we've changed a couple of numbers, we've got a deficiency in the pref for 2 years now. We do make it up before the refinance, which would be the key component here. So we may still be interested in utilizing perpetuity here. All in all, and of course it says 225 now because we changed the exit strategy to 10 years instead of 5. So it looks like it's a better deal, but same deal. And cash on cash gets a little screwy when you do a refi and you return the majority of the capital, and the investor's new basis is like nothing, right? Like capital account balance after refi is 230 grand. So on just the 230 grand, they're estimating it'll be a 46% cash on cash return average of the 230 that's in there after we return that from the refi. So then it blends all that out when you look at returns. Like we've got, can you guys see this? We've got 4%, 10%, 13%. Then after the refi, when there's only 230 left in the account, now we're at 46, 51, 56. And so it takes all these and blends them out. And that's how you get the average of 46. So whenever it tells me I've got a 46% cash on cash, I know it's not true. Don't try to screenshot this and send this to your investors and be like, hey, you're going to get a 46% cash on cash. They're going to be like, you're freaking lying. There's no way. And then upon further digging, they'll find out that that's right. There's no way. But yeah, so that's the deal. Now that we've underwrote that deal, I'm probably going to go back to the broker and see what they actually want from a purchase price perspective, because if it's close to 5 million, it may make sense. If it's way off, then it doesn't make any sense. But now that we've already underwrote it, we know what that looks like. And again, I'll add the underwriting of that deal, and I'll add the OM or whatever we were using. It was an OM, wasn't it? Yeah. I'll add that to the shared drive. That was it? Did anyone have any questions about that last one?
When you were doing the loss to lease, you had changed it in your, I guess, offer. And I wasn't sure exactly why you changed it there, because I remember you saying that, you're obviously assuming the deal as is. So I thought that it would have stayed the same as what we had seen in the OM. Basically, it would stay the same in the offer, but your projection is where it would change. So I guess I wasn't understanding why you changed it there.
So I changed it there because with loss to lease, again, what that is basically you're not achieving the rents. Like you're not achieving any rent at all. Like the unit is not being rented, or it's there and no one's paying rent. So either they've already initiated the evictions, or I'm going to initiate the evictions immediately once I take over. And then at that point, it's going to be, I don't know how long it takes in North Carolina, I'll say a month to get them out. Well, I'm still within the first month. And so that analyzer, that offer column there, was analyzing you in the entire first year. So that was the blended average of the first year. So I will get out as much as I can, right? And I think I was at like 2%. I was at 2% of whatever the concessions were, which is just kind of our rule of thumb average of what we underwrite in terms of people not paying rent, late payments, whatever the case is. And so I think it was like 6%, and I put it to 2%. So that 4% variance there, I'm basically saying people that are there now not paying, we will evict and replace with new tenants, because we'll renovate them after we replace it, and then we'll get the new higher premiums. But I didn't say we'd get the new higher premiums because I'm trying to stay conservative. But what I did say is that will at least be getting rent from those units, because those tenants will be evicted.
Gotcha.
That's what
Okay.
that was for.
So I have a question too. So to make something like this work, right? Like something that's 5 million, and let's say you don't have like obviously the cash total to do the down payment. If you do owner financing, like a portion of it, would banks will big banks take that as like a down payment, or they would still need like additional funds to cover that, whatever the down payment is, or
Yeah, I see what you're asking. So you're not actually paying the down payment to the bank. You're paying the down payment to the seller. So let's say in this example scenario, the seller wanted 25%, or the seller didn't want anything down. The seller just was willing to do owner financing, but they were only willing to owner finance 25%. Well, you could go to a bank and you can get a 75% LTV and have the bank pay for 75% of it, have the seller owner finance the other 25% with nothing due at closing. Maybe you got like a 6-month delay on payments or something like that. And so that would be a true no money down seller financed deal. Like you could close that deal with no cash out of pocket, except for due diligence and other stuff. But in terms of actually closing, get at the closing table, it would be no money down deal. And so the bank isn't directly caring whether or not the seller is holding that capital back or not, because they're looking at the asset. Again, they're looking at the asset and its ability to perform. And then you as the KP, if you're going to be the KP on the deal, your ability to perform if it's a recourse debt. If for whatever reason the deal doesn't perform and you're providing that guarantee. So that's what that would look like.
Okay, so you're going to the bank to get that, like the loan portion. You're sharing the underwriting you did, like, and then banks will do their own underwriting on that property to see if it makes sense for them.
Yeah, they always do their own underwriting.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about that. All right, I think that's all the time we got for questions. I hear my daughter screaming. So we